Bowling is a weird sport. A friend of mine called and invited me to go bowling with him and a couple of other friends. I hadn't been bowling in a long time, so I figured, what the hey? The bowling alley was inside of a mall. I also hadn't been to a mall in a long time, so it was kind of like taking a trip down memory lane. I got to the mall and I noticed that some of the stores had gone out of business. Some of the big stores, some of the anchor department stores had gone out of business. There were still a lot of restaurants and still a lot of stores that were doing business, and the bowling alley was particularly crowded. I decided to walk around the mall after we went bowling and was thinking about some of the ideas from bubble economics. I guess way back after World War II, the United States started building a ton of real estate, commercial real estate, retail real estate. And it turns out that the United States has more retail square footage per capita than any other country. But I guess when things are growing, it's easy to build too much. But when things stop growing, that's when there are problems. And I guess right now, according to some economists, we are kind of in the Wile E. Coyote stage where he runs off the cliff and it's too late when he realizes there's nothing underneath him and he's about to fall to his death. I found these three stores that used to be next to each other that had gone out of business, but it looked like some other company had come in and taken over all three of them and combined them into one big store. So I wandered inside just to see what kind of a shop it was, and it turned out to be a church, and they had services that coming weekend. And so I figured hanging around some happy Jesus people might put me in a better mood. Luckily, the church was accessible from outside in the parking lot, so when I showed up Sunday morning to go to church, while the mall was closed, you could still go inside the church. And it seemed to be a very comfortable church. The people inside seemed like very friendly church people. The only difference was they had these plastic chairs. They hadn't got around to putting in those wooden pews yet. The pastor was this old woman, and when she came out, before she started to speak, I could sense a kind of wave of relaxation wash over the crowd, like they had expected her, like they knew her, like they knew that she was going to talk about something happy, something friendly, something calming. And she had a very calm, relaxed look on her face. She came out and started to speak. She didn't really seem to have any kind of structure. She just kind of rambled on from point to point, but she had a very kind, relaxing message, a very friendly message, a very calming message. Almost as if you didn't need to pay attention to these words to feel content that everything is going to be fine, that everything is going to be safe, that everything is going to be okay. But then something changed. Her expression changed. Her demeanor changed. The energy of her voice changed. And as I look at this memory as it exists in my mind, I swear the light of the room changed. It became darker, more sinister, as if some other entity started to speak through this person, as if some other entity had taken over this person, and this entity was now speaking. A very angry entity, but this entity isn't here to punish. This entity is here to warn. You have become too lazy. You have become too entitled. You have become too accustomed to outsourcing as much responsibility as you can. You believe that every problem you have is somebody else's responsibility to fix. That will end soon. In your lifetime, there will be a change. There will be a cataclysmic collapse of the global food supply chain. Unless you live a short bicycle ride from a farm that produces food, you will starve. A time will come in the very near future where global food delivery will stop, when oil production will stop, where the only things you will have accessible to you are the things you can go out right now and get within 10 miles of where you are right now listening to my voice. The stuff that is produced within 10 miles of where you are right now listening to my voice. I have seen the future. I am the future. It is pain. It is agony. It is loneliness. It is death. You will either need to become a cannibal to survive, or you will get eaten by others, most likely while you are still alive and too weak to move, too weak to resist. The future is filled with a pain so unimaginable that when it comes, you will plead to Jesus for death. But it will be too late. But it will be too late. Your only hope is to get right with Jesus today, because when the time comes, when you do die, when you do suffer through unimaginable and ceaseless pain, unless you get right with Jesus today, you will not be admitted into the kingdom of heaven. But I promise you, even if you beg and plead with Jesus now, because your life has been filled with sin up to this point, you may not be admitted. For death is coming, and everybody will suffer an unimaginable amount of pain that will last for an eternity. And then she shifted back into her sweet, kind, lovely voice, and everybody got up and left, and a lot of people came up and introduced themselves to me, and we went out in the parking lot, and they had a tent set up, and they had donuts and coffee, and it was quite a nice service. I had forgotten how good bowling alley food was. In fact, we only bowled one game, and we spent most of our time drinking pitchers of beer and eating bowling alley food, pizzas and popcorn and nachos and carne asada fries. It was really a good time. But I guess some malls are completely wrecked. Some are filled with homeless drug addicts. I guess that's what happens when you have this massive buildup and you build way too much and you end up with a whole bunch of overcapacity. Eventually, they're going to have to deal with all this extra retail space. A lot of economists say the next big collapse, like the last one was based on housing prices. They say the next collapse is going to be an absolute collapse in real estate, commercial real estate prices. But who invented bowling anyway? I mean, who sits around and thinks of an idea of a really heavy ball you have to roll down this really tiny goddamn alley and try to knock over a bunch of pins?